and welcome to the Long Ways podcast. I'm Devin Windelspect.
And I'm Michael Windelspect.
And we're a father-son hiking duo out to hike the great long trails of the world. Now, Dad, it has been quite some time since we've done recording. We intended on doing this once a month, but unfortunately, as things tend to happen, life got in the way. I have been traveling a lot over the past few months for work. Dad is actually about to go on a trip to Belize himself. So we're managing to squeeze this in right between travel times between him and me. But we're excited to be back on the podcast with you and recording our next episode on the importance of a 0 day and what makes a great day off in the middle of the trail. Now, Dad, I think the first thing to do is to talk about, well, a few things happened with our own plans after our last recording on how to choose your trail that we should share with our listeners. So what happened and what is our new plan for our hike this summer?
Well, it has been an adventurous few months. So first of all, it seems like somebody's mysteriously taken some days out of the middle of each month. Okay, because I don't know what's going on. Okay? I just seem to be losing days. So
yeah,
I'm glad to be back too. I look forward to doing this. This is so much fun. And if you remember, we were super excited about the Dolomites, right?
Yes.
So this is, the Dolomites was where we're going to go. This is a trail we've always wanted to do. It seems, that at least several thousand other people had the exact same idea.
Exactly.
And so needless to say, we're not going to the Dolomites. We're still doing the Alps, but we are not going to the Dolomites. Thanks to our friends at Max Adventures for giving us a great suggestion. And Devin, I'm going to let you tell them where we're going.
Yeah, so we're going to the Julian Alps. It is kind of the easternmost edge of the Alps, in this place called Triglav National Park. The country we're going to is not Italy actually at this time, but I'm actually really excited for this, is Slovenia. Slovenia is a country neither of us have ever been to before.
By the way, I want to put in here that just for a preview, until now, I had barely heard of Slovenia. I've traveled all over the world. And when we first said we're going to Slovenia, I had to go figure out where we were going.
Not Slovakia, Slovenia, two separate countries.
Exactly. That's what I thought too. Okay. So
if you don't know where it is, it's this tiny country. It used to be part of Yugoslavia, kind of sandwiched in between Croatia, Austria, and Italy. It's from the photos, obviously, and from people I've talked to who have been there, it's absolutely gorgeous, right up there in the Alps. And we're going to be spending about 8 days hiking through the Julian Alps, mostly in this national park on the eastern edge of the Alps, right there by the Austrian-Italian border. So we're really excited for it.
Yes.
I actually, as much as I want to see the Dolomites, I'm actually almost more excited for this one because it's a little bit more of a off the beaten path trek. And one that I had never heard of before this, and I don't think a lot of other people have heard of. So yeah, we're really excited. And this just goes to show, as we talked about in our last podcast, sometimes your plans fall through. We talked an entire podcast about how to plan for the Dolomites, and it never really happened. So this is part of the adventure, is the lead up to the trail where things fall through and you say, okay, what's plan B or plan C?
And I think the important part of this is the fact that, it's not that the plans really fell through. It's that the fact that you have to give yourself lots of time to plan these long treks.
Yes.
The long ways, it takes some time. It takes time for the agencies to get in and get the sites. And in both cases, both for the Dolomites and even with the run in Slovenia, when we start to do the hut-to-hut hiking, things become a little bit different. You're not heading into towns where you may have 3 different hotels to choose from, which is the tradition of what we are used to.
Exactly.
Hut-to-hut hiking, is something which is a little bit more challenging, and also for the people who are helping to schedule these long trails.
Yeah, and I just want to pick that up. Like, this is also a new adventure for us because in the past we have done town-to-town hiking. And this is our first time where we're going to be staying in mountain huts and really staying in places where you don't have the amenities of a town around you. It's just you and the hut in the mountain. We have to carry our own clothes and a little bit heavier packs on these because we're used to just carrying day packs. So Dad and I did a bit of a run to REI recently, spent some money on some on some good clothes and some good packs for this trip. So we're really excited to also kind of push our own boundaries a little bit with this one and see if like this hut to hut hiking, which is like a step above the town to town hiking we're used to, is something that we can get excited for and do also. So if so, it opens up an entire new world of trails for us. And if not, well, then we know what we should stay with and what we shouldn't. So before we start on our podcast, just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up of what the next few recordings are going to look like, we're also going to be releasing our new kind of half episode podcast called The Short Ways. Dad, do you want to just give a little bit of a heads up of what the short ways are?
Sure. So, and this first short ways is going to be really something you want to listen for, because the elusive Eric, which we referred to, is actually on this podcast. Okay. And so what I decided to do was start to build some short podcast episodes, which are about some of the trails we take, the longer short trails, okay, that we take to start to get prepared for these long ones. The 8 and 9 mile day hikes where we go in and we, maybe stay at an Airbnb, hike for a couple of days. Each day we come back to, where we're staying. And these things are not only helping develop and get ready for the big hikes, but some of them are absolutely gorgeous and have their own stories to tell. You will see this on our website called The Short Ways. And it's just as much fun as these. They will usually just include as a subset. Devin may be on one, or just Devin and I, or maybe in this case, Eric and I will be on one. And it's going to tell some of the stories of us hiking just around this beautiful world that we live in.
Exactly. I mean, just as an example, I recently a little short ways hike of my own in Shenandoah National Park this weekend. So we wanted to do something that was just about these long trails we take, but also all the other shorter trails around the U.S., especially, that are worth talking about as well. So keep an eye out for that. But Dad, I think we should jump into this episode. So
I'm excited about this one. It's my favorite thing.
The non-hiking part? Yeah, maybe that's it.
And okay, it's not the bar episode, just so we know. Okay. It's a different one. Okay. This is my favorite part of the long ways hikes. So.
Exactly. Yeah. The days where we don't hike is Dad's favorite part. That's something to keep in mind. So today we are going to be talking about a 0 day and the importance of having a 0 day. To give you a little bit of a background, our first hike, we didn't plan a 0 day into the trail. A 0 day is, in hiker parlance, is a day where you sit down and you do nothing. It's a rest day. It's a day to go explore, sometimes the towns or the area you're in, without having to do these big 10 to 15 mile hikes. Sometimes they include a small hike, sometimes they don't. But we found that they're really, really important for us. However, on our first hike around Mont Blanc, we did not factor in a rest day. And Dad, do you want to tell us about how the rest day came about, how these 0 days came about?
Well, I'm just going to make it really simple for the sake of time. I got up and told Devin, I'm not doing this today. Okay. Because if you remember from our Mont Blanc discussions, this was kind of an impromptu type of
trip.
long way. So I was tired and hurt.
Yep.
Okay, and was wondering why I was doing this silly hike thing. And so I remember telling Devin, we were sitting there, and I said, we just need to go ahead and take a cab to the next spot. Needless to say, Devin did not think that was part of the plan.
I was very unhappy.
Right. But it ended up being a really useful rest for us. Now, in this down day, I'll let Devin give some of the details of it. We actually missed a segment of the hike, one of the shorter ones. It wasn't supposed to be one of the harder ones either. This was about 3 days in. But in general, our down days, we don't miss anything. We just basically, we try to, although we'll change that in a second. Okay. We try to stay in one spot. Okay. And then just take some time to relax. It's also a time to, replenish supplies if you're in a town, experience the local culture a little bit, sleep in, do laundry if you need to, right? Yep. Mend some wounds.
Yep. This first time was actually between the towns of Courmayeur and Champey. So we were supposed to hike between Courmayeur in Italy to Champey in Switzerland. It was a pretty decent hike, but it wasn't the hike itself that we wanted to skip. Like Dad said, normally we don't try to skip portions of the trail. And if we do, it's only because something came up, or, as is the case in the Dingo Way, we just didn't have the time to do like the last 2 days or something like that. But with this one, it was partly because this is pre-surgery, knee surgery for Dad.
It's true. Yep.
And Dad was going through a lot of pain with his knees from the amount of just stress we were putting on it from the hikes. So we decided to take a cab. That we woke up that morning, we decided to take a cab from Courmayeur to Champé. I was really mad the entire time. I was like, Dad's ruining my trip. Dad's not taking this seriously, not really knowing the amount of pain he was in until later on in the hike. But I think I came around to even that day. We kind of ended up in a little hostel-like hiking lodge, kind of right beside this really pristine alpine lake in Switzerland.
Beautiful.
I remember it was raining that day. So I remember just staying there with a book as it was raining outside, and then going down to like eat like a really nice meal with like a couple other people who were hiking it. There's these three women we kept leapfrogging around who I remember we got to sit down and have dinner with and actually like sit down and really have a nice talk with that night. And waking up the next morning, I just felt so rejuvenated and ready to take on the hike in a way that not taking that break, probably I would have gotten more and more worn down each day.
Well, I definitely know that I would have. I think that I had to have the day of, very little impact on my knees. And also, this is kind of like a mental reset day. It really is. It was beautiful. The town was beautiful. Okay. The lodging was amazing too, as always. And it was very much needed. It was a very different type of down day for us than what we started to plan after that.
Exactly.
Right.
So ever since then, we've decided to actually plan in down days to our trips. Dad, can you actually talk about what that looks like, how we planned them, why we planned them?
Sure. So what we usually try to do is we actually look at mileage, elevation changes, what the challenges of the trails are going to be. And then if we have something like we're on the trail for 6 days, obviously, 3 days later, you try to, you try to take a down day in the middle, but sometimes you go like a 4-3 or a 3-4, depending on what's facing you. It does take a little bit of time to plan. During COVID, it became a little bit more difficult to plan, as you'll see. But the idea behind this is to find a decent sized small town, okay, that you'll be able to, if you needed to resupply, or for example, when we were in Ireland, we needed to go get rain gear because it was so bad. Yeah, but we had rain gear, but we didn't have rain gear.
Yeah,
we didn't have hurricane gear. So you can do those types of things. But more and more, what we decided to do was make these into interesting little excursions.
Yeah,
we're not just going to sit around in a bar and drink beer, although in the afternoon we probably would. We would go find interesting things which were within a day's striking distance by some other form of transportation, and that was it. That's all you do. Things what we would like to see, and usually we have a little bit of a debate. What do you guys want to do? And so we pick a town and we go look at it. We go, oh, that'd be wonderful. Look what's nearby. Okay,
exactly. So like I said, it's also like, it's not just a day for rest and relaxation. It's also just a day to kind of see stuff that you otherwise wouldn't when you're just hiking. So most of our hikes are usually between 7 and 9 days, depending. And we normally put it right in the middle. That's not always possible. Usually we'll try to do like the majority of the hike before the rest day. So, and I think in our last one in Portugal, we did 4 days rest, then 3 days.
Right.
Because that way, like that last day, you can really push yourself, be like, oh, okay, I really need to do this because I know there's a rest day coming up. It's a little bit of a reward that happens.
Right.
But, sometimes we have to put them at one end or the other. Actually, in Slovenia coming up, we're actually going to do all 7 days without the rest day and then do a rest day at the very end. And that's just because of how the mountain huts work. If you take a rest day in a mountain hut, there's nothing to do there.
No. It is a rest day. Okay. But it was very difficult to get back-to-back reservations. Exactly. It's not how they work. Right. I mean, there's groups that are scheduling in and out of you, before and after you. Sorry. And I think that this was not something that Max Adventures suggested we do. As a matter of fact, they, once again, being the professionals and great advisors, they said, if you want to do it, we'll figure it out. Yep. Okay. But here's what we suggest. Okay. A day at the end. Okay. And, in this town. Okay. And, here's what's in the area. And so we said, fine, we'll do that. So.
Yeah. So this was actually going to be at the very end. We were going to hike for 7 days and then take a rest day, which I believe actually has like a nice little hike around the valley. that we can take, not as stressful
Yes.
as the other days, but sometimes on our hikes we end up doing a little bit of hiking anyways.
Okay, we don't want to do hiking on our rest days.
Well,
No, see, I know you're going to try to spin this. We ended up hiking on our rest
yeah,
days.
exactly, exactly. But I think the other thing when we get into these 0 days is why, I guess, is it so important to take these, Dad? We've been mentioning, a little bit of a mental break and that kind of stuff, but why are we doing this every trip now?
Well, from my perspective, it really is to slow down, to experience the culture of the area. Okay, we've done some pretty amazing ones from this. It is, you become so focused on the hike, right? That in moving from one spot to another, it's nice to be able to stop and to look at where you're at. Okay, we're always in different countries. And there's usually something close by that we can look at, and it is kind of there is a physical break to it, but there's also a little bit of a mental break of we're not hiking today. Okay, we're going to get on our train, for example, or something along those lines. Yeah,
The other thing to keep in mind is when you're hiking, especially, if you're a through hiker on the AT, even at the very beginning of getting into these, no matter how fit you are, you wear your body down pretty well. Um, Even if you're really, really fit, after about 4 or 5 days of hiking, you can really feel it. You can feel yourself getting tired. You can feel like it's a little bit stiffer every morning. And the
yep,
purpose of these 0 days really also is to give your body that time to rest. Um, you're gonna have blisters over your
yep.
feet sometimes. You're gonna have, a sunburn like I did in Portugal, our last trip. Um, in Ireland. Yeah,
Hypothermia
exactly.
in Ireland. I mean, almost all of our 0 days have been placed at the end of looking back at very convenient times.
Yeah, exactly. But you need that for your body too. If you're like a professional hiker, like you just got off the AT or something like that, maybe not. But even people on the AT, they will take 0 days regularly throughout. They're a little bit more spaced apart towards the end, but you need to let your body rest sometimes. And this is something that like any athlete will tell you. And even like professional athletes will tell you this when they're doing their things. They're like, yeah, I'll train 5, 6 days a week, but you have to
Yeah,
have that day off. And this is what this is. Now it's a day off you get to explore the culture. It's a day off that, you're in some beautiful towns along the coast to explore, go eat some good food, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to get to that because after this break, we're going to actually sit down and rank our favorite 0 days from our last few trails.
and it does involve bars. Just
And it does involve bars. So we're going to take a break right now and we'll be back in a few minutes. And welcome back. So we're going to start with kind of going over our 4 different 0 days on the trail. Um, Dad, tell me about the first two, the one in Mont Blanc and the one in Scotland.
Well, I think in my mind, we kind of covered the Mont Blanc one. It wasn't planned, so we didn't really have any excursions. It was just a day where we didn't hike. By the time we actually got the cab up into Switzerland, we didn't do much that afternoon.
Yeah,
A true down day, 0 day, where you get up in the morning and you're not going to do anything. You're planning on not doing anything or having another excursion. So I
exactly.
think the first one we did successfully, okay, was definitely when we're in Scotland. We plan to stop at this little place called Tindrum. Tindrum. Okay.
Yep.
And basically, it is nothing more than a train stop. Okay. With a cute little, like almost like
Yep.
a trailer park in between. Lovely little place. If you get a chance to stop there, great pubs nearby. Okay. But it's kind of
Hmm.
funny because one of the train stations on one side of the town, the other one's on the other. Make sure you go to the right one because one's a
Yeah.
southbound train and one's a northbound train. They don't happen in the same spot. And so we decided we were going to take a day off and we were going to take a train ride out to the coast. And one of the things we really wanted to see when we were in Scotland was the coast of Scotland. But the way the West Highland
Yeah.
Trail works, it doesn't really bring you near the coast in that segment we were in. Okay. I know
Yeah.
farther north it does. So we decided to take a train ride I happen to love trains. Okay, out to Oban on the coast. Okay, a fishing community, and also a place well known for its scotch.
Yes, exactly. There's a very famous brewery there. I think on that day, some of the things I remember, we took like a little boat ride out to like see like the Seal Island out by
Yes,
Oban.
yes. So we got there, and we hadn't really planned out the interior part of the day. We had made a short hike up to the top of this hill, which that did not make me very happy, because I was not going to hike. But we decided to take this little boat ride out that took us out to a seal island and also to sustainable fish farms, salmon farming areas. It was beautiful. I mean, it was a Scottish day. It was, we were moving in and out of rain squalls. You're getting the, it was cool. It was amazing. We have these incredible photos of seals and seabirds and stuff, and then this whole videotapes of basically the sustainable fish farming in the bay.
I think it was for salmon, if I remember correctly.
Well, it's mostly salmon. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing I remember about that day is I remember we did like a really good like fish and chips place. And we went to a distillery for Scotch whiskey, but it turned out that I'm the only one who actually likes Scotch. And Eric and David, Eric and Dad absolutely don't, especially when it's that smoky. And the fun thing about Scotland is like the further north you go,
exactly,
the smokier the whiskey is.
Yeah. It was also
the less and less Dad liked it.
Well, it was also hot as heck inside of the
I remember
inside the distillery. Okay, and we got in there, and it was super smoky. But people have had Oban Scotch, as some of you have heard it. It's very, very good. It has a great story associated with it. It wasn't what we were looking for, and I've got to tell you, this fish and chips was absolutely some of probably the best. And we ate a lot of fish and chips, on our excursions. But this was probably some of the best we've ever had. Small little restaurant. I can't remember the name of it. But it was just picking up the fish, and it was just so fresh, and it was just amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I would recommend, if you're just in Scotland, swing by Oban. I would say, and I know we're going to rank these towards the end, that was one of my favorite 0 days. Which means we're going to move on to one of our least favorite 0 days, which is Dunquin in Ireland.
Okay. But to be fair, when we planned it, it was going to be an amazing day.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so there's two things about Dunquin. So when we were in Ireland, we wanted to stay either in Dingle, which is the major town of the Dingle Peninsula, or Dunquin. We were actually suggested to go to Dunquin for a couple good reasons. One, it's absolutely beautiful. It's right there by the ocean. I remember walking through like the fields in the evening and just like getting like this beautiful look over the water with these like tiny little islands off the coast. It's actually one of the few places in Ireland where most people's first language is Irish. And one of the reasons we wanted to go is it has, I think, the westernmost pub in all of Europe. Depending on if you count the Azores or not, located right there.
A good down day destination, I may add.
A very good down day destination.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a couple things happened.
One was the typhoon.
Yeah, we got caught in a horrible rainstorm the night before. If you listen to one of our previous podcasts, The Worst Day on the Trail, you'll hear all about that. And the other thing is that Dunquin really wasn't near anything. It was near the pub that had been closed for COVID-19.
Exactly.
So there was nothing to do there.
There was no restaurants.
No restaurants. When we actually arrived, we arrived a little bit late for dinner at our Airbnb. And we actually had to take a bus to a nearby town, which we ended up walking past the next day.
Yeah.
To eat at like a tiny little hotel there, where we were like the only like one of like 3 people eating there.
Yeah.
So
this was as Ireland was just opening up. Well, I mean, it actually opened up while we were there.
Exactly. So on our 0 day, we actually ended up going, because there's nothing to do in Dunquin, we actually ended up going back to Dingle, the town we had just left, and hiked all the way to Dunquin on a bus. And there's
nothing is more discouraging than to go backwards and say that was a horrible day of hiking, and it takes you 15 minutes on the bus, and you're back.
I was about to say that.
Well, 7 hours of hiking.
Yeah, exactly. I actually remember that was a really once we got past Dingle, that was actually not a bad day. When we got into Dingle because it was really sunny that day. I remember there was a lot of tourists in, because again, Ireland had just opened up, so the tourists were coming back in from a lot of them from England, not quite the Americans yet. And I think we just spent the day. We spent the day shopping for rain gear,
We did.
for
Yep.
and we also just spent the day like sitting at like some nice breweries and pubs in Dingle that we didn't really have the time to do the night before when we got kind of in really late.
And
So that
Dingle's a
was actually,
beautiful town. I mean,
yeah,
all the buildings are different colors. It's an amazing. It is an amazing spot to spend a down day, especially if you don't want to do anything. It's right on the bay again.
exactly.
It's pretty. It's so there's so many different cultures there and everything. It's really worth it. Dunquin, I think if you went there now, it'd be very different. I don't know if I can't remember the name of the bar now that bar is open. And there's other things we were supposed to be able to do there. We talked about even a little fishing trip. There was
Yep.
nothing still open to the general public at that point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. One things we wanted to do was maybe take a boat out to like these islands right off the edge. That used to have a little community on them, which is now gone. But even that was closed during the time. So Dunquin wasn't our best location, but we ended up salvaging it and making a pretty good day in Dingle. The last of the 4 0 days we've done was in Portugal, in this little town called, and I'm not very good with Portuguese, but Odeixes, I think is how you say it, which is about halfway down the trail, on the Fisherman's Trail.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the end of the Fisherman's Trail, a part of the Road of Vicentina, and then we entered into the main route after it. I really liked Odeixe. It is like this right off the coast. So there's like two parts of it. There's one part that's like on the beach, and then you kind of like follow the river and the road inland, and you end up at like this really cool town that's kind of like built up on a hill with this windmill above it, kind of like looking over the entire town. Every time I think of it, because it's like this completely white city, I always think of Gondor for some reason, like minus Tirith.
It was, yeah.
Um, and it was just this perfect, so cute little Portuguese town, like tiny winding roads, a really beautiful courtyard where they had like a lot of food in it. Um, we were at the very, very top of this hill, which sucked when we were trying to get to it.
It did.
To have to walk all the way up that hill. That was like, I think, one of our longest days in the entire trail. And
It
then we had to
was.
go up this hill.
Yeah. And everything,
Um,
every place to eat or anything was at the bottom.
yep.
Yeah.
But I
It was
remember
beautiful though. I do it again.
that day, actually, and Dad didn't like this because Dad doesn't like hiking on his 0 days.
No.
But we actually hiked out to the beach that day. It was about maybe a 2 mile hike out to the beach.
Okay. I don't think it was 2 miles. I think it was like 50. Okay. Because it reminded me of that scene from Monty Python when they're running across the fields and you just keep,
Oh yeah.
no matter how much they run across the fields, okay, you never get closer to it. And we were hiking along the road and it was hot. Okay. And Devin, first of all, we had this conversation before about Devin guessing distances. Okay. But it was a decent hike out there and back.
It was a decent hike. I do remember that.
Yeah. But it
But it
worth
was
it.
worth it
It was
because
worth
we
it.
ended up spending the day at this tiny little beach town. We ended up eating some really good seafood and then just sitting by the beach for the entire afternoon. And that was a really relaxing day. The hike there and back
Okay.
was a little annoying.
Once
but
again, I'm going to add some color commentary to this. We didn't sit by the beach. What we did is we went out and each one of us rented an umbrella and we passed out on the beach.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you do
Under
definitely
these
did.
umbrellas, okay, with the sound of the ocean. It was the perfect
Yeah.
way to spend a 0 day.
Yeah, that was a really good one. And so coming up with our fifth 0 day is actually going to be at the very end of Slovenia, where we're going to be sitting by Lake Bled, I believe. Just sitting right there by the lake. There's a little, we'll see if we all do it, but there's a little hike up in the valley we can do. So those are our 4 0 days, Dad. Now, I want you to rank them from your favorite to least favorite.
I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that the one in Portugal with the town that I cannot pronounce, okay, and that seems to be a tradition. Okay, I'm so glad that Devin helps us with these because my versions of these towns' names would be horrible. I would definitely rank Portugal as the best because it really was very, very relaxing when we got out there at the beach. It's what we all needed, and the hike there and back was not what we expected, but it was fine. The second would definitely be Oban for me. It was just this picture perfect town, with, once again, good food, science. Okay, we went out there and learned about the seals and the agriculture. The third one would probably be Ireland, and the only reason why I'm putting it down, I think if we went there now, I'd probably change my mind. I think it's mostly because we were so worn out and so tired, okay, from the worst day on the trail, that we didn't, even when we got to back to Dingle, we really didn't do anything. We just kind of just wandered around, buying clothes and a couple of things. And, of course, the fourth one, because it wasn't really a planned day, would have been Mont Blanc. Although I think there's so many amazing places on the Mont Blanc Trail, being this circular trail, you could plant some truly amazing down days. And, that's the wonder of Mont Blanc. You can start anywhere and end anywhere, right? Yeah. So you could almost pick where what type of down day you want to have. Do I have it in a smaller city? Do I want to have it in a coast, a small town in the mountains? What do you want to do? But for us, the four we've had so far, I would definitely rank Portugal, Scotland, Ireland, and then the Mont Blanc Trail.
Yeah, I think mine would be similar. I do think Oban and Odeshe were our two best ones. I probably put Oban first, just because it was really cool to go experience another town, because that was kind of off our route. Because Odeshe, it was on the route, we had seen it the night before, but Oban was cool to just kind of jump off, see something new, and then come back. And then probably Odeshe. I really, really liked Portugal. I'm a huge fan of Portugal after that trip, just culture-wise, and being able to spend a little bit of time there. And then I would flip it. I really would put Dunquin at the end, just because of how worn out we were and how difficult it was to have to deal with logistics, getting back and forth when really all we wanted to do was rest. And then I would put probably Champay at third, just because of how needed it was. And looking back on how it kind of convinced us to take these 0 days, it was a really good way of learning the lesson of what we need to do on these trails to help inform further trails. So please keep in tune over the next month or two. We're going to at least have one more episode coming out, a shortwaves episode in June. And then we are going to be in Slovenia. So keep an eye on our social media, share it with your friends. And we are looking forward to talking to you again on the long ways about our trip in Slovenia. So once again, I'm Devin Windelspecht.
And I'm Michael Windelspecht.
And this is the Long Ways Podcast. Thank you for listening.